Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to you all out there. Whatever time it is where you are, it's afternoon for us, so we'll stick with that. I'm joined today by Chris Atkins,
Hi.
who's here to talk to us about her research journey and what she's been doing since the filming of her story. And there's quite a few things that have been happening. And I'm also curious to hear the updates because we do these talks every time the course runs. And Chris is very busy in the meantime in between courses. So I understand she's got some exciting things to share with
Wow.
us.
Because is this the fourth time we've run the course now,
Fifth
Takesha?
time,
The
fifth
fifth
time,
time.
yeah, yeah.
So, and every time there's been something else that has come up with the Patterson research. I'm trying to focus on one particular person for now. So that's my current research project, is to write a story about my great grandfather. And things just keep appearing. It's the most wonderful thing. One of the most amazing being a photograph of him. I know I've spent 3.5 years looking for, I know it's not very clear, but this is my great Gavin Patterson, an entrepreneur who retired aged 44.
Nice.
So to find that. And then I answered in the Greenock Telegraph, as you do when you're sort of doing your research, which you can do for hours, you sort of, I'll just Google Gavin Patterson and Patterson's of Greenock, which was the emporium, the draper shop that he owned. And I found an article there from somebody, and in it it said, was married to Catherine Patterson, whose family had a drapery business, Patterson's of Greenock. And I thought, that's my family. So I am now in touch with the descendants of Gavin's first wife's children, he and his first wife's children, Felicity, whom I've met in Edinburgh, and Ian, who lives in Australia, who is now hot-footing it across to Scotland in August to do a grand tour of all the places that I've put them in touch with.
Yeah.
And it's actually he who managed to find the photograph via New Zealand of our our great grandfather.
Great.
We also knew this grandfather, and I think I mentioned this last time, had the winner of the Scottish Grand National, but that was as far as we got. Well, I have now found that in 1903 at Bogside Racecourse, my great grandfather had the winner with a horse called Chit Chat. Which just must have been, it wasn't the favourite, it's in the sporting life, it wasn't the favourite, and so he won. And Ian in Australia has found a photograph of the horse.
That's very
And
important.
Ian is now making a poster
Oh, great.
with the birth, with all the bits of my records that I've sent him. So life is still going at a very fast pace with family research. I think when you decide then to flesh out one of your relatives, you stop doing a very wide search of all the other family members, and maybe that's the downside. But I think, my sort of legacy, I want to leave not just a lot of records, but I would quite like to leave some stories of, what it was like when these people lived. And so I started a course again at Strathclyde. Course this time, writing a family history, and maybe Tahisha will put this book up. And there's loads of books out there about how to write your family history. I found this one very good, and I discovered also that what I thought was a brick wall was in fact that I wasn't ready to write about my family, about Gavin, because I didn't have a good enough timeline. So you're writing away, Gavin was born in the farm, and you go, just get a photograph of the farm, and you get lost in your photograph section, and then you never get any writing done.
Yeah.
So I'm now doing a very comprehensive timeline so that when I write, I'm not having to go backwards and forwards, and I'm just attaching all the bits at the bottom that I need. So will never lose my love for the research of the family, but going to do a bit of the research about the social history. And there's a column here where I can write social history in, that you can put about what the fashion was. The newspapers are a phenomenal resource for, who was advertising what was happening in the town, what cattle were going to market, and so on and so forth. So those are all very useful things. So
And
still using
Chris, where are you finding the newspapers from?
well, there's Google newspapers.
Okay,
There's
yeah.
the British Newspaper Archive that you have to subscribe to, and Find My Past. That's my two subscriptions just now. Find My Past and the British newspapers,
Yeah.
and you find them there, and they are really amazing. I mean, you troll through thousands. If you type the name Patterson in, you get a lot of results. If you type Gavin in, you sort of lose it. So sometimes you just have to
Yeah.
play with it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they are a phenomenal
Yeah.
resource,
Yeah.
a phenomenal resource. And
And
then I use Evernote, and I do
right.
screen captures.
Yeah. And I was going to say that Google Newspapers is great because
They're
that's
quite good.
free.
Yes, they're free.
Yeah.
They're a wee
Yeah.
bit difficult because if you come out of one page, you have to go back to the beginning of your search,
Right.
which can be a bit daunting. But
Right.
I'm still this is my main source, my main book
Yeah. Yeah.
that came from your
Yeah.
course that I've been sort of telling a lot of
Yeah.
people about. And as you can see, mine is completely filled in, and I now have to have a second book because for someone like Gavin who married twice, I now have a page for Gavin and his first wife and Gavin and his second wife.
Ah, that's a good idea.
Well, it just
Yeah.
makes it easy because you forget,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
these children, because
Who's related to
who is
whom
related to
and
who, and
sure.
who
Yeah.
actually, when it comes to a census, these children from the first marriage, where they were from.
Uh-huh.
And then from meeting the family, my half family, they sent me a lovely letter that had been sent to my father in
Great.
1988 and that I didn't know about. And all these cousins, half cousins, had played together at this great grandfather's house, and I never knew. So it is important that I have their
Yeah.
details, their heritage
Yeah.
as well
Yeah. Yeah.
in there. So that's where I'm at just now.
Yeah, I suppose I mean that's a very good point because as the interesting thing is researching your direct blood lineage, but it's that those extra people, the siblings that then
Yes,
come off
yes,
and are cousins, and family materials can travel through different lines,
yes,
and
yes.
for us then reaching out to what might be our fifth cousin, I don't know, third removed. I always get lost on those lines, but those people may very well have photographs and letters and all
Well,
sorts of memories
absolutely. Yes, yes.
that I don't have or you
Yeah.
don't have. So yeah, they're
Because I was
important.
able to share with them when Gavin was married to their mother, well, their great grandmother, they lived in Cattle Hill Crescent in Greenock, and I had a photograph. I had been to Greenock and taken a photo, so I sent that to them. And also, they hadn't realised that Gavin and his first wife were buried in Greenock Cemetery, and of course,
Okay.
that comes sometime later. So I've sent that
Yeah.
with her. So they are just over the moon because this has opened up their research to a
Yeah.
whole new avenue.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here
Sure.
comes August. Let's see what happens.
You guys will have a great time in Scotland. Definitely. Yeah. 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 So Chris, well, I know you guys are on the second week at the moment. So you've been hearing some information about Chris's family. So this is a kind of a taster of what's to come in the next couple of weeks as you go along the course as well. So remember back to what we've just been talking about with the Patterson family. So what are your plans with, so you're writing up the story of Gavin,
Yes.
and because one of the questions that we had was from, let's see, what's her name? Kathleen Fruin. Do you want to talk
Oh,
about that?
Kathleen would like to ask us, what are you going to do with all the research you collect? Thank you for your question, Kathleen. Thank you, everybody, for the questions.
Yeah.
Great questions
Yeah.
this time. Well, it's an interesting one because when you're writing, you've very much got to be aware of who you're writing it for. And I'm not writing it really for other historians or other genealogists. I'm writing it for my family, really. And I will write it, but I also might do a blog page where the family can look in online. But it's for, I've got one son, but I'm one of 5 children, so it's for all my nieces and nephews and whatever. I do like to have the proper documents. I have downloaded everything from Scotland's people. We're very lucky in Scotland that we can have actual copies of the documents, and I do love having those. And I suppose my son will hand those on wherever he thinks. And then for the family coming over from Australia, I shall make them each a file with everything pertaining to Gavin Patterson, and then that will be their sort of family sort of
Yeah.
line. So yes, I don't feel it's an empty task. I think it is something that I will do for the family, and then it will be sort of handed down through not only the Patterson line, but now my son's line as well.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, I suppose it's getting those stories together and passing
Yes.
on the bits that are interesting to people.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why I think
Yeah.
I'm doing the stories, because you can do your timeline and all your bits and pieces and your families, your these sheets. But at the end of the day, it doesn't tell you the story of them and
Yeah.
what maybe they were thinking. And did they go to school? Were they literate? What on earth made him become a draper? Because all the other family members were farmers,
Yeah.
and so you are putting, it's kind of hypothetical, but it's interesting. And I'm using a lot of resources like newspapers. They are phenomenal resources. Even sort of what was the popular kind of shoe to wear at that type of day, and
Yeah.
who was having a sale. What was a draper shop? I mean, that's been quite a lot of my research. He opened a draper shop in Greenock and made a lot of money. And when his first wife died, he retired at 44, having made quite a bit of money. That's why he's worth researching. So I would like to flesh him out a little bit.
Yeah.
And now having
Yeah.
his photograph and a little bit about the horse, I'm more able to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear, well, I certainly have people in my family who don't come from, I mean, what you're describing are not things like, oh, I've got these letters from
Yes,
Gavin,
I
and
am.
he's been able to describe himself in his own words. You're fleshing out and creating the story using lots of secondary
Yes,
materials that
yes,
help you create
yes,
what his life and reality
yeah,
might have been
yes,
like.
yes,
And okay, you can do that with someone who was a middle class businessman, but you can also do it for people who are I suppose down the social scale, up the social scale, doing
yes,
different things.
yes,
I mean, I certainly have lots of my family were uh, shipbuilders who didn't have much money at all, and so for me, getting to know what life was like for that side of the family who really didn't have much and were made good lives for themselves because of their hard work. But what was it like working as a shipbuilder
mm,
during the First World War
yeah,
and moving from a country to the States with very little money? And I don't have records and letters and photographs of that side of the family, but for me, it's been very much about reading about what life would have been like
yes,
for those Irish immigrants coming and moving to Washington State and then becoming
yeah.
shipbuilders during the Second World War and so on and so forth.
And
Trying to build up that
yes,
understanding.
and that's where the social
Mhm.
history is so important
Yeah,
because you can have a better
yeah,
picture of anybody's life, no matter
yeah,
whether rich or poor.
yeah.
You can sort of see what life was like at the time, and therefore you can sort of, your social history. You can put your
Hmm.
ancestor in
Hmm.
there, and
Hmm.
it gives you a better understanding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And for me too, that type of thing just helps me connect to my ancestors as living, breathing
Yeah.
people, and not
Yes.
just kind of these names and dates on
Yes.
a
Yes.
piece of paper. It's yeah,
Because the only thing I
brings
think
them
we
to
have
life.
of Gavin is that we have the jockey silks. that were whatever clothes we had to dress up in as children with this jockey's
Yeah,
top and cap. And of course now we realise actually they're over 100 years old.
precious
Precious
things.
things. So that's actually something that Gavin will have, touched. But
Yeah,
because as you say, there's nothing else. We don't have any letters. We
yeah,
don't. The only thing I have is his trust fund book that I spoke about last time
right.
about the things that
Yeah,
he had.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So yes,
So
so hold on to those things if you have them,
yes.
and if
Oh
you
gosh,
don't,
yes.
then you can try to
Yeah.
build a picture of someone using secondary sources. So in the fifth week of the class, we'll start looking at secondary sources and to try to give an idea of the types of things that you might be able to find. And next week, we're going to start looking at some different types of records. So census, birth, marriage, and death, church records. Again, because I was writing the class to try to appeal to people no matter where they are
Mm,
in the world, I'm not really focusing on a particular
yeah.
country's, this is where you can find records from such and such a place. But I'm sure folks will have realized that a lot of our examples are coming from the United Kingdom and the States. The States, because that's my family, and those are the examples that
Mm,
I had. And the United Kingdom, because that's where we're based and thus also had examples. So those areas are perhaps a bit more represented on the course, but I'm trying to give some ideas, no matter where you are, of the types of things that you might be able to find.
I do notice,
Um,
Tahisha, this, and well, it happens every time, but there's a lot of very good comments on the
oh,
pages this time that are very
yeah,
helpful. So thank you for sharing your ideas and where you're finding resources. That's
yeah.
very useful for everyone
Yeah,
that's on the course.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely, and
Mm.
great for me too, because it's like, oh, I didn't know about that
Yes,
particular
yes.
thing, but yeah, thanks to everybody for your comments and your questions. They're
Mm.
really good. So on that note, we have more questions that have come in on the forum actually. Let's see. And there was one. Do you want to take the one that the other one that was particularly pointed at you?
From
I don't remember.
James,
Oh yes, from James.
mentioned the video that you had to go to your library to access some digital records.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some things that you would have to go to the library, or you do have to have a subscription, and
Mm.
that was in the early days when that video was shot, and Ancestry was free at the is and still is free at
Mm.
the local library. I don't go so much now. I go to the Mitchell a lot because it's quite nice to go through the archives. But there are so many online
Mm.
resources now. But there are some things I think you're going to mention that you have to go
Yeah,
online
yeah,
for.
yeah. I mean, what's available will depend on the archive that you're using. But some of the examples that I came up with were things like the Kirk Session records in Scotland.
Mm.
They've been digitized, at least the ones that the National Library of, sorry, the National Archives of Scotland hold. But up to this point, you can't access them more widely on
Mm.
Scotland's
Mm.
people. You have to be at a Scotland's People
Yeah,
Centre.
yeah.
And let's see, I think there were a couple of other ones that, oh yeah, on Family Search, again, lots and lots of digital images available, but some of them you can only open up and access if you're at a family search center,
Ah.
a center itself, or if you have a Church of Latter-day
Mhm.
Saints login, I believe, which I don't have, so I haven't experienced that personally. So,
And we were also saying sometimes if you watch, I was sort of informed through Facebook mainly.
mm,
Quite often places like Find My Past or Ancestry will have a free weekend.
yeah,
They
yeah.
just had one here in the UK because of the suffragettes, and they usually have one for Father's Day or Mother's Day. So
Mm.
then you sort of get onto the computer and you just sit there for 2 days while it's because their resources are good. I don't use them to store my main family tree online, but I do have a sample family tree so that people can respond.
Mm.
And for Ancestry, I did have a membership, and then I kind of felt I'd used it
Mm.
enough. I
Mm.
didn't need it for now. I want to find my past because they also have newspapers,
Yeah.
and I wanted the British newspapers. So it's worth watching out to see what's free.
Yeah.
What's advertised
Yeah.
as coming
Yeah.
as free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And other
Definitely.
free places we were saying well, Google newspapers
Hmm.
are worth doing.
Yeah.
Google
Absolutely.
Books are also very
Yeah.
interesting. They've got a lot of free e-reader books, old books.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Lots of
then your
yeah.
local family history society are usually quite good
Yeah.
and worth sort of seeing what they've got.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And I think in the it might be the sixth class. I can't remember now. Which one it is? Maybe it's the fifth one. I talk about archives and libraries and
Mm.
family history societies and sort of the power that they can bring to your research. So definitely worthwhile
Yes.
having a look at local family
Yes.
history societies and genealogy
Yeah.
societies,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of what they call themselves.
And
Very,
the other great source that we have, and I'm quite sure other will be something similar, is the National Library of Scotland's a great map section where you can actually overlay old
yeah.
maps with new maps, and that is just absolutely amazing. Sometimes that can help you actually verify. In Gavin's house, I knew the name of it, Caterina Villa, but then I didn't know which one it was. So the map showed me that actually it was the only one that had been built in the street when he lived there, just through overlaying the maps. So maps are another useful resource,
Yeah.
and they are online.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They are. They're an amazing
Mm.
resource. Yeah, definitely. Right. Okay. So there's lots of questions from the
Mm.
forums. Lorraine Stevens was she's been using records from Quebec written in French. Now a number of you were
Mm.
making suggestions on the forums, which are great. I think that the idea of using Facebook groups to help
Mm.
get help with translation. The other thing I would say is a lot of us, including myself, struggle with deciphering old handwriting,
Yes. Oh.
and
Mm.
that's another great place to get help with, putting up an image, of the bit that you're
Yes,
struggling
yes.
with, and trying to crowdsource other eyes to help you work
Mm-hmm,
out
mm-hmm.
what that's about. One Facebook group in particular I want to mention is one that's grown out of actually people who have taken this
Mm.
course. So there's a Facebook group which has thousands of members. Everyone who's taken, well, not everyone who's taken the course, but lots of people who have joined that group. So you might just if you're on Facebook, type in genealogy, researching your family tree, and that Facebook group should pop
Mm.
up. So, and I know a lot of people are using that for supporting one another
Mm.
and continuing help. The thing that I often do if I'm presented with a particular record set that has language that I don't read, then I use Google Translate, which I
Mm.
have to say isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Right, I can imagine.
But it can really help. So that you just what you'll have to do is just type in the foreign word letter by letter, and then it pulls it up into English or whatever other language it is you
Mm.
want to translate to. It is definitely a rough translation. But the thing about records, birth, marriage, death, and wills, and is they're usually very formulaic. So you'll start seeing the same words over and
Mm.
over
Yes.
again, which helps. And you'll start sensing, oh, that means born, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a good one. So Keith Dickinson was asking about the suffragette question, and in the 1911 UK census, it wasn't just the English census, Keith. It was Scotland and Ireland, as well as other areas within the United Kingdom. Suffragettes were one of the ways that they were protesting was to not take part in the 1911 census.
I didn't know that
Yeah,
until I saw Keith's
yeah, yeah,
question. Ah, how
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And so what I did is I posted on the forum. There was a very interesting talk that was done a couple of years ago. I think right around the time that census was being released, right after, by a couple of academics who had been studying that question, and how many women were likely to
Mm.
have been not counted, I
Mm.
suppose. And I think their finding was it wasn't as many as were anticipated,
Right.
but it still had an effect. But one of our uh, MSc students a couple of years ago did a project looking at the suffragette movement and how you can try to find out information about an ancestor who might have been a suffragette by looking at different records.
Mm.
So she had some examples in her dissertation, one of which is a spoilt 1911 census household schedule from England and Wales. And what the woman has written on it, she says, I refuse to fill in this form as a protest against being called upon to perform a citizen's duties while denied a citizen's rights. She
Wow.
signed her name. And then there's a little registrar's report that, I failed to persuade Mrs. So and so to fill in and give any particulars. So you can see that, and indeed, she's not signed it. It's just this blank form. You're not going to be able to see it if
Mm.
I hold it up. But that was very interesting. But so there's more information on the link that I shared in the forum, yeah, about that issue, but really interesting. Didn't seem to be more being completed with false names. More just the thought was to just refuse
Just refuse. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to fill it in, because that way you got fined a small amount, but I think the fine was potentially bigger if you filled in the form with a fake
Right.
name.
Mm.
I need to do a bit more reading about that, but anyway, interesting stuff. Um, right, other questions that we have. So both Alexander and Jean were curious about records being, records in and around Fife. So there's this issue of quite a few of the census records from Fife, and some OPR records being lost because the ship went down.
Oh.
And on Scotland's People, there's a useful list of the different parishes within Fife that were lost. It's the 1841 census that's the issue. Um, and wondering if Alexander was wondering if there were any substitutes that were available, and not I suppose, substitutes as such, but what I would suggest potentially using are things like local directories,
The post
newspapers.
office
Yeah, the
directories.
post
Yeah,
office
yeah.
directories, which are available on the National Library of Scotland website for free. But newspapers,
Hmm.
valuation rolls, and valuation rolls in Scotland started in 1855, so you're looking a little later than the 1841, but they're quite useful, and those are available on Scotland's People. Um, but I'd also suggest getting in touch with the Fife Family History Society.
Right.
They have a good website that has information on parish registers and what's available. One of their members went through and sort of fine tooth comb
Gosh.
detail
Yeah.
for every parish in Fife, looking at what's available and what's not. And that's available on their website for free. Um, so Jean was wondering about the OPRs, if there's a suggestion for an alternative search if those are lost. Um, but if the original parish record was destroyed,
Mm.
then really for Scotland there's no real
There's
backup.
nothing. No.
Yeah, it's not like in England where there were the bishop's transcripts and a copy was sent off to the local diocesan registry. That we don't have bishops in
Right.
Scotland.
Yeah.
That system wasn't and isn't there, so there's no backup, sadly. So yes.
That is sad because census gives you so much information
Mm.
about who else was living beside them,
Mm.
who was missing. Actually, I wonder if somebody was missing, if the wife, mother was missing, you could say she was a suffragette. But quite often, if there's a child missing, where are they? Are they staying with an aunt? Have they left
Yeah.
home? That's a shame that they're
Yeah,
missing. That's
yeah. Well, it's just for 1841.
yes, for
So
one. Yeah, yeah.
and not all of them for Fife. It's just
Right,
certain
just a
parishes.
certain parish.
Yeah, certain registration districts. So yeah, yeah. But some great questions there. Let's see. Mike Udall was curious about aliases and the term alias being used on parish registers and
Oh,
other
I've never
records.
seen that.
No, I hadn't either.
Yes,
This is a great one.
interesting.
It's like, oh, excellent. And I've given a bit of information on the forum about this, but it looks actually like it wasn't somebody trying to cloak themselves under
Right,
a
right.
different name. It was more being revealed. So it might be a woman, like her maiden name, or I think there's a number of suggestions that were given. That let's see, yes, yeah, people, well, yeah, men, well, reluctant to abandon ancestral names and retaining the forenames of their fathers or grandfathers as surnames. So and so. William Harry, alias Watt, with Watt being his grandfather's forename. So
Oh gosh.
strange.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to be a particular,
A devious.
every
Yeah, yeah.
time you see alias, it's going to be one particular reason. But yeah, so anyway, I think I gave the link to this article that's on the Family Search Wiki about aliases, and I had a look online for different possibilities, and that this seems to be the best kind of overview of the alias issue. Like the alias issue, yes. Um, let's see, what else did we have here? Um, oh, yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to pick up on the ones that I didn't have time to look at the forums about. So Darlene Knaus, sorry, I'm going to mangle your last name and how to say that. She was curious about narrowing the search for a person who immigrated to the States before 1906. When we get more detail in the records, she apparently has three potential records for an ancestor, and just knows that the census record for the person who's her ancestor, it said Prussia, Darmstadt, and I have some of these issues in my family. If you don't know the person's parent names, then it can be very difficult to pinpoint someone back in the home country. If you've got, it helps that you know where the person comes from. But what I would suggest doing is because you know Darmstadt, which was part of the Prussian area for Hessen, I have a look at the Family Search Wiki for links. There, I was having a
Mm.
look, and there are quite a few archives within the Hessen area that have both vital and church records digitized and available.
Mm.
Um, and also on the Family Search website as well. Now, that's of course you would be helpful if you know the parent
Mm-hmm.
names,
Yes.
because looking people up in those records, well, you might
Mm.
have the right person, you
Mm.
might not have the right person.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's yes.
yeah. Um, the other thing that I would say is that for some places within Germany, there were kept records of people who were leaving. So people had to apply for permission,
Yeah.
basically, to leave. So again, you might be able to hook up the name and the
Mm.
date, because you might not know the date. Anyway, it's a challenge.
Yes.
I have a
That's a
number
yeah.
of family lines where I just can't get back
Yes.
beyond. I know they immigrated in about 1553 from,
That's way back.
so not 1553, 1853,
Uh,
sorry, 1853, from a certain place in
yeah.
Germany, but I don't know their family, their
Mm.
parent names,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm stymied. Um, if you are wanting to use these records from the archives in Germany, you'll really need a knowledge of German.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
yeah. The other thing I was going to suggest is if you know anything about other members of the family who might have migrated as well, um, try searching on their information. You might get some people who were married at a time when the parent names were being taken on marriage records in the
Mm.
States. Again, I've got a couple of lines where my particular ancestor, nothing, because and they were either born too early or died or
Right.
whatever, but other siblings ended up having second marriages, and thus, oh, right, that's the
Mm-hmm.
parent name. Excellent. But again, it can be just
Mm.
quite challenging. So, yeah. Yeah, lots of immigration questions. Rose MacArthur was asking about South Africa, um, and yeah, and curious about why someone might have emigrated into South Africa. She was thinking it might have been part of a scheme that was going on in the 1870s and 1880s. And Rose, what I might suggest doing is seeing if some of the schemes might have had records that have survived that give lists of people's names, and I have seen some of these types of things, not
Mm.
necessarily for South Africa, but that might help. But again, it can be just very difficult to
Mm.
pinpoint why someone immigrated unless you have the letters, so on and so forth. So someone else was asking about South Africa. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Yeah, and I think I was that there again on the forum. I was giving some suggestions. One of the sources for South African archival records is the South African Archives, but I have to say that their online search area, which has some transcribed data on it and some indexes, um, is quite unuser friendly.
Oh, that's
But it is available, and I've
um,
given I think the link to that on the forums. It is a bit of a challenge, but just take a deep breath and try to work your way through the links and
mm.
see if you can find things. I've given a couple of other ideas as well, but it may just be a challenge. Sometimes it is a challenge. So let's see, I've got a couple more minutes left for any any. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Well, our lovely assistant is going to pass the. Thank you. Got some questions actually from the live stream itself.
Oh gosh.
So, um, right. Oh, right. DK is asking, do you have any timeline software that you would recommend? Are you using software for your timeline?
I searched for timeline, excuse me, software, and I haven't found anything that I particularly liked. So I just used a Word document and put a table in,
Okay.
and created my own. In fact, I've now changed it to landscape, so I can do my own headings. So there was nothing that you could sort of have a nice line, with your dates on it and do, I was going to do the family above and the social history below. It was too complex So I
Mm.
think I've just made my own thing. But if you do find one, or if anybody knows one, please put it on the links
Mm.
because the answer is no. I haven't found an ideal
Yeah,
template.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I certainly use I put information about my family into Family Tree Maker. That's
Yes,
the software
yes,
that I use to gather everything together. And there is a way in Family Tree Maker to output a timeline of the person or the family.
yes,
It's just one of
yeah.
the reports that you can choose.
But that tends to run to about 10 pages.
Yeah,
It kind of goes
yeah.
diagonally across the
It's
page. And by the time you've flicked through three or four
I
pages, you've kind of lost the plot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
It's not yeah,
it's not ideal
it's not
either.
ideal.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I like you, I probably would just
I've
do it
just
in
sort of
yeah,
done one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Excel as well. I mean, you know,
Yes,
a
yes.
spreadsheet
Yeah.
depends on where you so Gareth is asking about the family record template available for download. Well, it's actually a book that the
Yes.
Aberdeen and Northeast Family History Society have created,
Yeah.
and you can buy it from them.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they're not going to allow us to. It would break their copyright
Yeah. Yeah.
entirely were
Yeah.
we to put it up on the website.
But
But
what I've decided to do is to have a spare book. And if I suddenly discover a family that I want to put in, I'm going to take this book to bits and take a page out, and I'm going to physically stick it in, sellotape it in to add it in because we can't plagiarize the.
yeah,
And to me, this is the best one. I've looked at there are quite a few free family pages online, but this one works for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. Good. Cheryl Lee, we will provide the names and links to the resources that we've mentioned and the book titles as well. I'll scratch those down, and it'll probably be next week when I get to that. So let's see. Right, Gareth is asking, how do you ensure that the paper stories and files withstand the test of time? Modern computer paper and inks probably won't last more than 50 years before being
Yeah.
illegible. Do you use anything special? That's a great
That's a
question.
great question. And
Yeah.
the answer is I don't. Do you?
I don't use, well, if I suppose I haven't as of yet, but
Mm.
what I should do really is buy some acid-free paper.
I do that. I
Yeah,
have acid-free wallets.
yeah, and
Not this one in particular, but
yeah,
I do buy some A4 wallets and acetate-free for photographs
yeah,
and so
yeah,
on and so forth.
yeah,
But
and
the
put things
ink is
in.
an interesting one.
Yeah, the ink would be
Yes,
an
yeah,
interesting one,
yeah.
which I haven't actually thought of.
Although
Yeah.
I do have everything on record as well on the computer
Mm,
that I
mm,
could print them out again. But that doesn't answer the problem.
no.
Yeah, you're right. There should be something.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
But yeah, definitely the acid-free would be the way to go.
If anyone has any ideas, please let us know.
Yeah, yeah. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left. Let's see. Ken Watling is asking, am I right in thinking children from unmarried parents had to use their mother's maiden name on official documents, e.g., marriage, christening? Well, it depends on what country you're talking about, as with so much of this, but certainly in Scotland up to 1919 on birth certificates and then other official records, if you had been born illegitimate, then that information would follow you
Yes.
on to other records.
Yes, but my grandmother was illegitimate, but she was known by her mother's maiden name, and then her mother married, but she still kept her mother's maiden name.
Yeah.
She never knew who her father was, but it was always illegitimate
Yeah,
all the way
on
through.
her.
So
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah. So 1919. In Scotland, I believe in England as well, up until a certain point in England, I can't remember the date for that. A child couldn't be registered. The father's information couldn't be put on the
yeah,
certificate
yeah,
unless the father was there
yeah,
at the registrar's office and was giving
yes,
his consent
yes.
to being added. So yeah, yeah. Let's see. Aaron Dunn's asking about. We'll just take a couple more then. Okay, girl, we've got 10 more minutes. We're good. Um, what's the best website for finding passenger lists of ships coming to the United Kingdom from Russia and Eastern Europe at the end of the 1800s? So incoming records into the United Kingdom, incoming passenger records started being kept in 1890,
Mm.
and those were by and large being kept for people outside of Europe.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the Americas, at Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So, and I don't think Russia and Eastern Europe are captured in that, but I'm not 100% sure about that, to be honest. But as far as the best website, you could go and have a look. I mean, those incoming passenger records are captured on Ancestry. Find My Past, I believe, also has them. And I think Family Search might have them as
Right.
well, though I'm not 100% sure about Family Search.
Yeah. Or go to Q, the national records.
Yeah. You could,
Get that,
you
yeah.
could go in
I've got
person
to do that.
and look. I mean,
Yeah.
they've all been digitized, so they won't let you look at the real things any longer. But you can look on their
Yeah.
computers
Yeah.
actually at the National Archives at Kew. A couple of other folks were asking about passenger lists, and I wanted to, let me just see if I can find that information. I wanted to mention there's a great outfit group of people called the Immigrant Ships Transcribers Guild, and this is a group of people who transcribe passenger lists, and it's available for free on the internet, and they have over 17,000. I think it's 17,000 names. No, 17,000 passenger lists available.
Can you just
to
say the
look
name
at.
again?
The Immigrant Ships Transcribers Guild.
Ah,
They're
I'm
just-
going to look that one.
Google that, and you can. There is a way to search by a name. You can also browse. They're arranged in volumes. It's an amazing resource.
Yeah.
Really great, and that covers people, ships going from all different areas in the world to all other different areas.
Yes.
It's not just one place to one place. Let me see if I can find my. There was another thought that I had about passenger lists, and now talk amongst yourselves while I'm looking for that. Oh, well, maybe I'm not actually going to find it. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Eileen was asking about family members emigrating to America and Australia, and she wasn't sure about exact dates of where they sailed from, but she's thinking it was probably Glasgow. For the states, U.S. Census records will give you the year of immigration, and from that you might be able to work back to find the passenger lists. So what I was thinking is, have you looked at incoming passenger lists into the States, but also to Australia as well? The National Archives of Australia has a great passenger arrivals index that you can look at that's free, and that runs up until 1960, I believe. Let's see.
Does she say what time, which year she's looking for?
She doesn't. Well, no, she doesn't know the exact dates of where they sailed from. So yeah, I don't know.
Because I know that
else.
in the mid 1800s, they were sailing from all over the west coast of Scotland. And although you think Glasgow's the big port and that's where we sail from now, they were sailing from Skye. They were sailing from all sorts of places. So it's worth not narrowing yourselves just to Glasgow. Have a look sort of everywhere. But I think, as Tahisha said, maybe start at the other end where they arrived. And see if you can work backwards. It's quite difficult to.
It can be quite difficult, and I'm always pleased when I find something on a passenger list, because I find so often I'm not able to find people on passenger lists. As I said, the outward passenger lists only began being taken in 1890, and again you can search by name up to 1860 there. The other sites that you can use, the Ellis Island website that's out of the States is great. You can search that for free, and that's excellent too. So let's see. Oh, right, this is great. Well, Mark Robertson, is interested to hear from you how you interest your younger members of your family in the history. He's finding it hard to interest his nephews and nieces. Any luck with that?
Well, they do tend to glaze over sometimes. Well, you'll see that I actually get together at some point and we all talk. But if we meet at a social occasion or whatever, they will always ask. I think photographs are a great thing. If you can find photographic evidence, they like to see the actual documents or photographs or a copy of a newspaper at the time. But sometimes even although they might not be interested now, the fact that you've produced this weight of evidence will be there for when they retire or when they're ready to look at it. And that's what I'm sort of holding on to, because I wish someone in my family had done this before, and nobody has. So I'm just going to sort of leave it now to go down the generation, and someone will want it somewhere. But it depends on the mood they're in. You send them the odd thing through WhatsApp or whatever, and sort of catch them. But yes, it comes and goes. It comes and goes. I think it depends. If you're telling them quite a sort of boring story, then yes, they're not interested. If you come with nice little snippets, like the fact that he had won this, my great grandfather had won this race, that's really quite interesting. So yes, I suppose it depends on what you're telling them, and when you're speaking to them. But they will be interested at some point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was my experience.
Yeah.
I was one of these children who was given the family tree, but also I have to say, in I think it was high school actually, I was tasked. It was some class. I don't know if it was civics or what it was, to do the family tree. So I had to go and talk to my dad and talk to my mom and my stepmother and so on, and create the family tree. And I was just like, oh no, really? And I was interested in history at that point, but I think somehow I hadn't quite connected it to me and my family, and maybe that was the first point at which I thought, oh, right, this is not it's me and
it's
my
your family.
people.
I think also connecting these relatives or our ancestors to the social scene, and I think that's maybe one of the way you get them. Like the suffragettes, if you can sort of tie them into that bit, or World War One. If they're interested in that, you can say, well, actually, some of your ancestors were there. Your grandfather did this or whatever, and then they begin to marry the two together. Because I think you're right. Sometimes just a family tree, you've got no idea who. Just a lovely list of names, but if you pad it out, this is the man that went to war and is buried. I mean, I've got somebody buried in Palestine, and I've got somebody buried in Gallipoli. I'd love to have gone to visit the graves, but that won't happen. And that has interested the family because it's kind of topical just now. Both areas are topical. That they say, oh, well, yes, your great uncle Bertie is buried there. Those little sort of reality stories are sort of bring it more alive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's great. That's good. Ah, right. So question from DGD. Sorry, I won't spend time on that. But asking, how important is religion when doing genealogy research in Great Britain? Saying in France and Germany, it's really important for the church records. It's important here certainly, particularly once you get past civil registration points. So 1855 for Scotland, 1837 for England and Wales. Ireland, it's 1864, 1845, depending on the type of record that you're looking at. But before that, you're reliant on church records.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even after that, of course, people were still getting baptized and married in church, etc. And it's good to keep looking for those church records. Absolutely.
Some are easier to find. The free church can be quite difficult to find. I've got a family from the West Coast, from the free church, and I'm finding that one a bit difficult. So yes, it does matter. Pre 1855 in Scotland.
It definitely does. And I think one of actually another question that came up previously was about someone finding one baptism record that mentions the parents and the child, but he can't find the other four children in the family, and wondering about finding out about the other records. This is on the west of, I think, the west of Scotland. And my thought was perhaps the family were not active in the Church of Scotland. They might have been what's called nonconformists. So in the Free Church. And there was a large event that happened in Scotland where 60% of the communicants, the Great Disruption of 1843, about 60% of the communicants of the Church of Scotland walked out, and along with their ministers, and set up their own church, basically the Free Church. And so all of those people were suddenly outside of the Church of Scotland. So, and I have seen families where some members will be baptized married within the church, but then others
Won't.
won't
Yeah.
be, and sometimes it
Yeah.
just
I think sometimes if you have to pay as well,
I
you maybe
yeah
pay for the first child, sometimes then the other children are not.
yeah yeah
So
yeah
it
it
depends.
depends.
Yeah.
Now Scotland's people is increasingly having um, non-conformist church records on, so you might
Right.
check back if it's been a
Mm.
while since you've looked at Scotland's people. For England and Wales, there's a website called BMD Registers,
Hmm.
and they have the nonconformist records that the National Archives hold, and they've been digitized
Mm.
and made
Oh, that's
available.
good to know.
Um, but yeah, you might have to go to an archive because there's a vast range of things that
Mm.
haven't been digitized yet
Yes.
and are still in archives.
Mm. Mm.
Again, to harken back to the Mitchell, that's one that has quite a few
Mm.
church records that that haven't been digitized yet, and you actually have to go in
Mm.
person. The
Mm.
nice thing about that is you actually get to hold them
Oh, yes.
and
Yes. And I
use
do
them.
have to say that the staff at the Mitchell are
Yeah,
wonderful. I mean, you can go with the sort of most obtuse sort of idea of what you're going to look for in your head, and they will say, "Well, we'll have a look here and we'll look there." And you say, "Oh, yes, that's a good idea." They are really excellent.
yeah,
They know their
yeah,
stock.
yeah,
They know
yeah,
what's
yeah.
down in the bowels of
Yeah.
the music of the library.
Absolutely, and that will be the same for your local archive
Mm.
too.
Mm.
So
Mm.
go off and use your local archive because it's very important. Ask questions. So and your national archive as well.
Yes.
All
Yes.
quite useful. Right. Well, that's us up
Oh.
at the end of the hour. Sadly, gosh, time just flies when
Mm.
we're chatting away. So. Well, thanks to everyone for your
Thank
questions,
you.
both on the forums and here just today as well. Really hope you're enjoying the
Mm.
course and look forward to the next couple of weeks. As I said, next week we're going to start looking at some of the different record sets and continue following on from that. On the fourth week, so not next week, but the week after, we'll hold another couple of live stream sessions. I'm going to do one a bit earlier in my afternoon that talks about the educational offerings that we have here at Strathclyde, both things that sort of introductory 8-week courses and the MSc course as well. And then my colleague Graham Holton's going to join me and we'll do some talking about genetic genealogy, so DNA
DNA.
testing,
Yes.
which will be happening that
Yes.
week. We'll also talk about other questions too. And then I also wanted to say that the fifth week, I'm off to the States, and one thing that I'll be doing is doing a live diary because I'll be at a genealogical conference called Roots Tech.
Mm.
And so I'll every day take photos and tell you
And how will we be able to find that, Tahisha?
it'll be on so there'll be a separate, like,
Oh,
well,
there'll
not
be
a
a link.
separate, there'll be
Yeah.
a page on week 5 where I'll be uploading
Oh, lovely. Oh, good.
photos
Oh,
and sort of
excellent. Excellent.
things that I experience day to day while I'm at Roots Tech. So have a look out for that on week 5.
Thank you. That will be good.
Yeah, it was fun last year. Did it last year. So well, thanks to everyone for listening and taking part. And I hope you have a good rest of your day or your evening or your morning, wherever you are.
And
So,
happy researching.
yeah, happy researching. Have fun.